Hi everybody, I'm Ryan, and today we're going to talk about flex slots and different builds of the Boros Convoke deck in Standard. Now, if you're looking for a sideboard guide or a deck tech or primer or anything like that, please be sure to check out the other videos I did on this deck on the channel. Today we're just going to focus on flex slots and different cards you can play in those slots. So we're starting with the non-flex slots. If you play Boros Convoke in Standard, you are pretty much bought in to playing these cards. These 51 cards in the main deck and the single card in the sideboard. As you can see, this is a newer archetype that is not totally figured out yet. So if you'd like to look at the cards you pretty much have to play, please pause the video and check it out. This video is about the flex slots, so let's talk about those. So you're going to be selecting 9 of these 17 cards to play in the main deck and 14 of these 30 cards to play in the sideboard. Let's talk about these cards and why you would play them. Yodian Frontliner is a 1-mana 1/1. Whenever Yodian Frontliner attacks, another target creature you control gets +++ until end of turn, and you can unearth for 1 white, which basically just means bring it back to the battlefield, but then it gets exiled, and it has haste and whatnot. The reason this card is decent is because it's a good target for Gleeful Demolition. And being an artifact, it's a creature you can attack with and actually attack. It's kind of a 2-power creature because it can pump something else up. And even after you Gleeful Demolition or it's blocked or whatever, you can bring it back to either Gleeful Demolition again or attack for even more. You could play up to 2 Clockwork Percussionist, which is a 1-mana 1/1 with haste. When Clockwork Percussionist dies, exile the top card of your library. You may play it till the end of your next turn. So Clockwork Percussionist is also an artifact creature with haste, so it can attack immediately. It can be targeted with Gleeful Demolition, which we love, and then it digs us even deeper, which can be pretty important in a deck that has a lot of redundant cards, and you need to draw kind of both sides of your deck, the enablers and the payoffs. You can play the 4th Case of the Great Way Express, which is an enchantment case. When it enters, choose 1 target creature you don't control. Each creature you control deals 1 damage to that creature, which you should always be able to kill your opponent's creatures with this. We are going super, super wide. If you can't with Case, then something has already gone horribly wrong. And to solve it is we've attacked with 3 or more creatures, which is very easy to do with this deck. And then essentially anthems, right? Creatures you control get +1/+0, which is excellent as we go super, super wide. Well, if we play this, we're playing it as a removal spell. The pump is mostly just gravy. You can play Resolute Reinforcements 3 and 4. It is a 2-mana 1/1 with flash. When it enters, you get another 1/1. This is 2 permanents with 1 card. That's the primary reason we're playing this. Another kind of interesting part with this is that it's instant speed, so we can make them fear other stuff. But it's a little less powerful in the Boros deck where we can't leave up Protect the Negotiators or whatever. But it's a pretty powerful card if we're feeling like we need some more enablers. You can play 2 Sheltered by Ghosts. It's an enchantment aura, and when it enters, exile target non-land permanent opponent controls until Sheltered by Ghosts leaves the battlefield. Enchanted creature gets +1/+0 and has lifelink and ward 2. Sheltered by Ghosts, essentially, the primary reason I'll be playing this would be against the aggressive red decks. That's where Sheltered by Ghosts shines, and if you think you're going to be playing against them a lot, then playing some Sheltered by Ghosts in the main deck is probably powerful. You can play up to 2 Arabella. It is an artifact creature, legendary though. When it attacks, deals X damage to each opponent, and you gain X life, where X is the number of creatures you control, power 2 or less. And it's a 1/3. So it can be targeted with Gleeful Demolition, which we love. And it kind of rewards you for going really, really wide, because most of our creatures are power 2 or less. And so this is really good against decks that you think you're going to be racing against. Though 2 mana for just a 1/3 is kind of tough. You can play up to 3 Sanguine Evangelists. It is a 3-mana 2/1 with Battle Cry, which means when it attacks, all other creatures that are also attacking get +1/+0. And when it enters or dies, create a 1/1 black bat creature token with flying. So it's 2 bodies in 1 card. If they answer this, which they kind of have to because Battle Cry is super nasty in this deck, then you get another bat that has evasion, allows you to go wide, and it's kind of like a payoff in and of itself. So it's a really good bridge card between not quite being an enabler, not quite being a payoff, but being a slightly less powerful combination of both. You can play up to 2 War Leader's Call. It's a 3-mana enchantment. It is an anthem. Creatures you control get +1/+1. And whenever a creature you control enters, War Leader's Call deals 1 damage to each opponent. So this is really good for a lot of surprise damage, just being able to play it, everything get bigger, jam. So it's certainly a payoff, but it's a pretty horrible top deck, in the deep late game if they're already answering your stuff. It doesn't really help you enable or even help the other payoffs. But it's pretty decent, especially if you're putting a lot of creatures in the battlefield after you're playing War Leader's Call, but then the game's going super long, so it's kind of tough. Or we can play Painter Studio Deface Gallery. This is an enchantment room. The first room is when you 3 mana when you unlock this door, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play them till the end of your next turn, and the other one is whenever you attacking creatures you control get +1/+0 till end of turn. So it's effectively a 2 mana anthem. Game +1/+0, so it rewards you for going super wide. And then if the game goes longer, we can dig for 3 mana. So you're going to be selecting 9 of these 17 cards to add to your main deck. Let's talk about what we're going to be adding to our sideboard. We're going to be selecting 14 of these 30 cards. You can play up to 2 Requisition Raid, which is 1 white mana with Spree for an additional generic mana, destroy target artifact, for another additional generic mana, destroy target enchantment, and for another additional generic mana, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature target player controls. So it's great artifact and enchantment hit you can side in, and then with the extra gravy to be able to just like pump all your homies up if you don't have an artifact or enchantment to destroy, or if you'd want to just spend an extra mana on it. Destroy Evil is a 2 mana instant, destroy target creature with toughness 4 or greater, or destroy target enchantment. Great enchantment hit, great against decks that have big bluts that are looking to block. You can play up to 4 Invasion of Gobakon. It's a 2 mana siege. When it enters, look at target opponent's hand. You may cast a non-land card from it for as long as that card remains exiled. Its owner may play it. A spell cast this way costs 2 more to cast, and then it flips because it's an invasion. It starts at 3. If you're able to defeat the siege, it flips into enchantment at the beginning of your end step. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature that attack this turn, and then we can sacrifice it to have creatures you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. So playing 4 of these is certainly a concession to this deck being really soft to board wipes. It can rebuild, but certainly not past 2 board wipes. And so being able to get that out of their hand is really powerful. But also this deck can capitalize on the opposite side, on the Light Shield Array side pretty well as well, putting +1/+1 counters on your creatures. A second Rest in Peace is a good option for graveyard hate. So 2 mana enchantment, enters, exile all graveyards, and then it exiles anything that would go to the graveyard. You can play up to 3 Sheltered by Ghosts in the sideboard. We've already talked about Sheltered by Ghosts. It's just very, very strong against the aggressive decks. You can play 1 Kutziel's Flanker. It's a 3 mana 3/1 with flash. When it enters, you choose one. Put a +1/+1 counter on it for each creature that left the battlefield under your control this turn. You gain 2 life at Scry 2 or exile target player's graveyard. We almost never are going to use the first ability, but it's fine against aggro. We gain life, Scry 2, and then we can block, and we can exile target player's graveyard, so it's fine like graveyard hate and to interrupt. It's one of those like Jack of all trades, master of none cards. It's always fine, but it'll never be as good as any dedicated card to one like strategy. Aven Interrupter is filling a similar slot as Invasion of Gobakon. We can play 4 Aven Interrupter. It's a 3 mana 2/2 with flash and flying. When it enters, exile target spell, it becomes plotted. Spells your opponent cast from graveyard or from exile cost 2 more to cast. This is mostly for the board wipes. It delays those board wipes, which is very powerful against us. It's also decent against combo as well, or even against things that people are casting from the graveyard. What's kind of cool too is it combos with Invasion of Gobakon, because Invasion of Gobakon puts them in exile, and then they have to cast it from exile, and Aven Interrupter makes it cost even 2 more. We can play 2 Lithomanic Barrage. It's a 1 mana red sorcery. It can't be countered, and deals 1 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Deals 5 damage instead if that is white or blue. There's a lot of white or blue decks. Specifically, I'm thinking about the Esper and Dimir bounce decks. This being very, very powerful against. Torch the Tower as a 1 mana instant with Bargain, and deal 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If the spell is Bargain, instead deals 3 damage to target creature and you to that permanent and you scry 1. Excuse me. If a permanent dealt damage by Torch Tower would die, exile it instead. Mostly, we would be playing this card against the aggressive decks. It can be fine against the bounce decks and whatever. But this is very good against the aggressive decks. It's cheap removal. It removes most of their creatures, and it makes it so Heartfire Hero doesn't deal damage to you when he dies. We can play 2 Urbras Forge. It's a 3 mana artifact. Being a comment in your turn, put an oil counter on Urbras Forge. Then create a X1 red Phyrexian horror creature token with trample and haste, where X is the number of oil counters on Urbras Forge. Sacrifice that token at the beginning of the next end step. This is very good against decks that are going really long. I think one big issue with this card, though, and the reason it's slowly falling out of favor rather than just being an auto include, is that most of the decks that are going really long, like Blue Eye Control or the Domain Zur decks or anything like that, are playing Authority of the Consuls in the sideboard. And if your opponent has an Authority of the Consuls, then Urbras Forge just reads your opponent gains 1 life every turn, which we don't love. You can play up to 2 Chandra Spark Hunter. It's a 4 mana planeswalker. At the beginning of combat in your turn, choose up to 1 target vehicle you control until end of turn it becomes an artifact creature and gains haste. That doesn't really matter except for its own abilities. It's +2 as you sacrifice an artifact or discard a card if you do draw a card. We're going to have plenty of spare artifacts, and we're going to have a lot of cards that just don't do anything that we're going to draw, so that's great. It's 0 is create a 3/2 colorless vehicle artifact token with crew 1, which we can then man up for free at the beginning of combat because of Chandra Spark Hunter's first ability. And it's also very easy to crew it being crew 1. We're going to have a million X1s. And its -7 is you get an emblem whenever an artifact you control enters. This emblem deals 3 damage to any target, which in this deck just means you win the game. So it's very good against decks that are really good at answering our strategy, good against board wipe decks, and allows us to have a little bit more longevity. And you can play up to 2 Lightning Helix. It is a 2-mana instant, deal 3 damage to any target, and you gain 3 life. Mostly for the aggressive decks, gives us that little extra life gain and removal. So you're going to be selecting 14 of these 30 cards, and you're going to be selecting 9 of these 17 cards. And then you have your very own but stock version of Boros Convoke in Standard. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.